What's up, y'all? It's me, it's your boy Asmongold, and today I figured I'd talk to you guys about cliques and guilds and how to deal with them. This is going to be one of my guild leadership or guild management videos, and whenever I make one of these, people have a tendency to get pretty fucking pissed off, and so I just kind of want to let you guys know what to expect before I really get into the video too much. Now, the first thing I do kind of want to do is I want to define really the way that I'm going to be using clique in this video, so you guys know really basically what I'm talking about. And so a clique is within a larger organization, and so obviously in this video we're going to be using a raiding guild, but you can see this in workplaces and schools with like in crowds. This is basically just a human phenomenon for no other reason. I think it's basically a survival mechanism, and so it's very core to the way that people act. And within this larger group, you see a smaller group of people, and in the raiding guild, maybe 3 to 4, 6 to 7 people that keep to themselves, very close knit, don't really talk to a whole lot of other people within the guild. It's like kind of a guild within the guild. And so this can obviously, not all cliques are bad for guilds, of course. But as a general rule, I would say that cliques are more often than not toxic to guilds. Now, this is going to be mostly, I'm going to be approaching this from more of a leadership management perspective, but I do want to kind of address a lot of you guys that aren't really in that position who have to deal with this anyway. And oftentimes, cliques are also linked with one person in the officer corps or something like that, and oftentimes like somebody will come into a guild and they're not really part of the in crowd, you know what I mean? And so sometimes like this happened. I was actually part of this whenever I was a lot younger, not really smart or anything like that, and I was in, you know, like kind of like the in crowd, and so somebody else would come into the guild and they would basically just be a tool for us to advance ourselves. And so make sure that you don't join a guild, and if you are in a guild where you feel like you're basically just a tool to advance the in crowd, you probably should open up WoW Progress and look for another guild, because there's really not a lot that you can really do to stop that, to get people out of their ways. And what happened with my old guild is I left the guild after I kind of realized, you know, how much this was torpedoing our chances of success and really just kind of the environment in the guild. And that guild ended up breaking up, as almost all of them do over time. And so toxic people end up poisoning themselves after they run out of people outside around them to also ruin their time as well. And so my best advice to you guys, if you're in a situation like that, don't try and change them. Don't fight the good fight. Don't do anything like that, because it's really just not going to make a difference. They are stuck in their ways. These are probably 20, 30, 40-year-old adults, you know, that they're going to be doing what they're going to be doing, and nothing really you can do is going to be able to stop that. So my advice to you, again, is just find another fucking guild, because it's a horrible situation where you put yourself in, you don't get loot, you don't get in for progression bosses that you need. It's just, you know, a vicious cycle, and it's going to make you hate yourself and hate the game. And so I do kind of want to give you guys also some examples, and this is like, that's basically what I have to say for you guys if you're not really in that leadership position, and the rest of it is basically just like kind of my methodology for dealing with these kinds of situations. And so the first thing, well, not first, I've already said like first thing like 2 or 3 times, but besides that, some of the different examples I guess I can use that are, I guess, like negative and toxic to a guild environment, and actually run counter to the purpose of a guild. And so one of the things that people in these cliques like to do, and so these are good ways, like, you know, if you don't know if you're you know, part of a clique or part of you know, a guild that has this, let me know if any of these ring a fucking bell. So people in the guild have a special channel, like, you know, how you have like /1 is general, /2 is trade, /4 is general chat. I think it's like /5. Well, it doesn't even matter what /5 is. These people have like /7 or something like that, and it's like kind of a secret channel that them, like only like 4 or 5, and you know, everybody in this little clique has access to, but not everybody does in the guild. And so this is just one example. Another example is people in Ventrilo. They have binds, which is like kind of a private speaking where you can speak directly to one person if you hold down like Control R or something like that. That's another example of kind of cliques and, like, you know, kind of like groups within groups. And again, that kind of just runs counter to the whole teamwork, cohesive element of a guild that's very necessary for it to succeed. And another example is for people to be doing like Skype conversations over, you know, like Mumble or over Ventrilo. Like, this was an issue in my guild, and I was very outspoken about it, and I really didn't like it, because again, I think it really it just kind of undermines the main most important thing of a guild is, you know, you never really, it's like cars are not really tested, you know, for their safety unless they're getting hit, right? Because it doesn't really matter really how strong a car's, you know, they're like how easy it is for a car to, like, like protect somebody if it's not getting hit, right? If you're just driving around, nothing's really hitting the car, it doesn't really matter. What I'm really trying to get at here is that, things are tested, like the strength of your organization, the strength of your guild, the strength of yourself is really only tested whenever you're put in a difficult situation. And so, whenever you are put in those difficult situations, and your guild will no doubt be in those difficult situations, you come up to a hard boss and you just can't really make it. And at that point, you really need to have everybody come together and everybody work together, and you need to be playing on the same team. And whenever you have teams within teams, groups within groups, you have this very strong propensity to create an us and them mentality, which again is it's exactly counter to the very nature and the core element of what is most important for building teams and making sure that you're successful. And I've been a part of these secret channels, these secret Skype calls, and I don't really like to beat around the bush. I don't really like to talk a whole lot of bullshit. I don't like to pretend what I can't see, what's right there in front of me I can't see. Most of the time, people have those little channels, those little Skype calls, little binds to talk to each other, to shit talk other people in the guild, and to complain about how things are going. Nothing good can come of that. Nothing good can possibly come of small little groups of people shit-talking other people who aren't in this small little group. It's not good for anybody, okay? It will not be good for the success of your guild in the long term, and it's also not good really for that group of people. It will make them want to quit the guild. It's also not good for the people who are outside of it, because eventually they're going to find out, and then that creates more drama. Again, it's just very important to promote cohesiveness and one team, one goal, okay? And that's really kind of where I really kind of want to, give you guys a window into the way that I look at solving problems, and how I advise everybody else to solve problems. I'm very goal-oriented, objective-oriented whenever whenever I do something, pretty much for the guild or for anything like that. And I ask myself this one question that I've actually, it's from Office Space actually, almost. Is this good for the guild? And whenever you see somebody who is talking to like their friend and saying how bad everybody else in the guild is, that's just not good for the guild. And so that's really kind of how I would encourage everybody who's in any sort of leadership position. Make sure that you put the needs of the many above the needs of the few. And by doing that, you can kind of rule out and make things a lot simpler. A lot of people kind of have moral or ethical problems with like kind of getting rid of somebody or something like that. But whenever you look at kind of what really, why are you in charge of this organization? It's everybody is at least passively, but more often than not in a more organized organization, has collectively decided to make you the leader, give you some sort of authority, to give you basically the power. You're basically the keeper of the flame here, and you can't really betray those people just by allowing yourself to kind of give people the benefit of the doubt. And sometimes it is good to give the people the benefit of the doubt. It's really a case-by-case basis, and so I do want to say that as well. Anything that I say in these videos is always open to interpretation by each direct event, and each individual event, and you have to look at each one differently. But what I really kind of want to give you guys is a framework for how to really structure your decision-making skills. So make decisions that are based on the betterment of the majority of people and what is going to be best, what will make not just you, not just them, but everybody successful. And after you do that, after you realize what your real goal is, these other kind of minor real issues like that are not really as big of a deal, and it's much easier to kind of discard them or figure out what side of the fence you want to go on whenever you're making those decisions. Again, I do want to say that, of course, like whenever you ask somebody about this stuff, they're not really going to kind of say that, oh, hey, we're talking shit about people, in their special channel or something like that. But again, I want to urge you guys to make decisions based on rules and not exceptions. And so while that might be a possibility, it's probably not a probability. And so as an officer, one thing you could do is ask to be part of that channel, just so you know kind of what they're talking about, or at least somebody who's like a trustworthy person who's part of your leadership core is part of those, part of those channels, part of those discussions, so they know that no foul play is going on and you don't have this toxic mentality building up to where people don't even know about it. And so it's always good to kind of nip that shit in the bud before it really even happens. Again, do not make decisions based on exceptions, make them based on rules. And people are obviously going to tell you, I think this is also another thing that I really should say, is that people are going to tell you what benefits them. Whenever you compromise somebody, the odds are that they're going to do what's going to help themselves, and especially in a situation like this, whenever they don't really feel like they're on the same team as you, and they don't have necessarily the same goals. So I do want to say that right now, because it's very important to kind of, I guess like make your decisions based on actions and not on words. Don't let people tell you that you're not seeing what's in plain sight. And so anyway, another thing is that this is something that can kind of happen a lot with like bad players in guilds, and this happens also, in like workplaces where you have like an employee or something like that who's underperforming, and they kind of insulate themselves around other people in the hopes that that insulation, those relationships will keep them from getting fired, because they may be friends with the supervisor, manager, whatever, or also other coworkers, and hopefully those coworkers would object if that person was disciplined or something like that. And so these players, it's like most people are not like really stupid. It's like when they consistently show up on 15th place on the DPS meter, they know that. Like they know that they're underperforming. And so they have to either, improve, and so that would be great, right? But that's not really going to happen. Usually it doesn't really happen. Also, what they will do is they'll insulate and make friends with other people and try to move into these cliques, so those cliques can kind of insulate them and secure their raid spot without actually having to do anything. Now, this is obviously a really shitty thing for people to do, and it's really disappointing that I have to make these videos and talk to you guys about this stuff, because I don't really know why people can't just improve, but it just doesn't really happen that way. And so instead of kind of pretending and thinking that everything should be this way, so it is, it's just not. And so it's important to, again, make sure that you're making your decisions and doing these things based on what is and not what should be. And so I'm going to kind of really skip over the method of talk to them and say that you don't really want them to do it, and then hopefully they won't do it again, because usually what happens then is they just either make a new channel or they say they're not doing it anymore and then they still are, and it just also kind of creates a bit of confrontation. And really the best thing to do, as a general rule, guys, I want to tell you something. It's always better to stab somebody in the back than from the front, because if you stab somebody in the front, hypothetically, they have a chance to retaliate and respond to you. But if you stab them in the back, there's a good propensity and a chance that they won't actually be able to retaliate, and you can get what you're trying to do done without really a whole lot of trouble. Is this really a fair thing to do? Well, no, but it's not really fair for them to be sitting in your guild wasting everybody else's time either, is it? And so, again, greater good, do what's best for the most people. And so I really have two different methods of handling this stuff, and hopefully one of these two will work for you. There are a lot of other methods that you can use, but this is what's worked for me. Sorry, I don't know what is in my throat. Okay, so the first method that I'm going to really kind of talk about is, I guess, like my divide and conquer method, which really is where you remove players from the clique until it basically collapses. So I'll give you guys a personal example with myself and how we handled this in the past, and how these things, if they're not dealt with quickly and if they're not dealt with correctly, they can manifest to be bigger problems than they would potentially be. We had two people in my guild. This was at the end of Throne of Thunder, and they were causing a lot of problems. They were creating a lot of unrest. They were talking to people about kind of getting together and having those people threaten to quit the guild with them, to create some sort of an ultimatum, to create a power play, to do what was inevitably, like ultimately, not really in the best interest of the guild. And so what I had wanted to do is I had wanted to take those two people and at the start of the raid, public execution style, tell them, hey, we know exactly what you're doing in front of everybody. Say that, we know exactly what you're doing and you're not part of this guild anymore. Thank you for coming. You can leave at your own discretion over the course of the week, but there will not be a spot for you, in the next raid tier. And, there were a couple people, in like our core, like there were a couple people who wanted to do this. There was one guy who didn't. And so, I didn't really want to step on any toes and do this, without really kind of a consensus. And so I kind of let this happen. And what ended up happening is later on, about probably like three months later, those 2 people turned into 4 or 5 people, and all 5 of those people ended up leaving the guild. And the reason for that is because they had talked to those people and created this unrest, and they were in there talking to each other, after raids, complaining about how things were, and they did try and pull a power play, but obviously I was already ready for that and expecting it, so I had enough people to bring in to where we could take that loss. But it's always important to be proactive as well. That's, I think, really the main point that I'm trying to make here, is that you have to be proactive and replace people from the clique. That's really what we did, is we basically took the group of people that we thought were problem people, and then we would bring in one person and put one person who is not in the clique now in the raid, and then put the person who's in the clique out of the raid. And so now this creates a a kind of a what's really the word for this? A conflict of interest between the people who are still in the clique who also want to raid with the guild, because on one end what they can do is they can stay in the guild, and this is also a win-win situation for you, no matter really whatever way this turns out. So if they do choose to stay with the guild, obviously this strengthens their bond with the guild, because they've chosen staying with this group of people, over staying with this person who's also potentially toxic that you're getting rid of, and so that strengthens them, and so you keep that player, you get a new player who's better than the person you got rid of, and also you get rid of this person who is causing problems. The other thing that could happen is they could leave the guild because their friend's not getting enough raid time, or their friend no longer has a raid spot. That's also good, because if you have somebody who prioritizes their friendship over somebody else, over the success of the guild, obviously there are a lot of people who do that. Like, I know of some of my friends, like back in the day, if one of my friends got kicked out of the guild, if that happened, I'd have quit the guild too, right? And I would have done that without any real malice or anything like that, but I would have, that's better for them that they have somebody who's out of their team, who's not going to waste their time, by, staying in there and causing problems, and they can get somebody else in there who's more dedicated, who really cares. And so really kind of you're doing them a favor if you are going to be leaving and if you are in that position. And so either way, no matter what happens, this is going to be better for you. And honestly, this is like really kind of always a give and take. And I do want to emphasize this again, because it is very important. And in any of these videos that I do, I just need to say this over and over just so people don't forget, is that this is very subjective and very situational. The way that I handle things is different than other people handle them, and just because I handle them this way doesn't mean that this is the best way. It just means that this is the way that I feel comfortable doing it, and also different strokes for different folks. And so, you have to handle each situation differently, but this is the way that I had done it. Also, as a general rule, whenever you create like kind of a clique like this, or you don't really create it, but it creates itself within the guild, it's always important to kind of, like whenever you are going to get rid of somebody, and this ties into the second, I guess, like method that I have, which is really kind of, let me think of like kind of the word for it, maybe like replacement, where you like replace people out of the guild, and that's basically the same thing, but you kind of, in the first one, you kind of force them to leave, and the second one, you kind of replace people, and then it kind of reaches a critical mass. Really kind of what it comes down to is making sure that you can kind of separate those people apart from each other to where they can't play a big enough part within the guild's, like leadership, or, within the guild's roster in order to enact some sort of a change, or to where they can kind of bully their friends into the group. And that's really kind of what happens, is that you end up, this starts with like 3 or 4 people, and then, oh, hey, my friend wants to come in, and you can't really tell them no. And so it just becomes, the problem just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's always important to stop things before they really happen. As a general rule also, this is like more of a basic thing, is that if you have like 3, you have like a conflict between like 2 different types of people, within the clique, it's always important to kind of, I guess, like, if you want to really kind of like, I'm trying to think of like the way to put this, if you want to come out ahead in the end, all right, it's important to always kind of like pick the sides with the weaker person. And the reason for that is that way you can get rid of the person who is kind of like more in charge. And I did this in Firelands as well. And so also this is things to watch out for as a guild leader, because people will do this stuff innately. They'll kind of pick sides with a weaker person and try and, like collectively overthrow the, the leadership or something like that. And then after the dust is settled, they'll then subjugate the weaker person who they had teamed up with to overthrow the stronger person at the beginning. And so this is like really kind of basic stuff, with like kind of, like leadership and making sure and dealing with people, really. And again, it's always better to know these things. It's always better to know these things than not. And if you don't know these things, you will get blindsided by them, and people will know them and they'll use them against you. And so it's important to know these things before they do happen. Cliques can also be very dangerous whenever you have, especially like you have like a person in the guild who's not really performing very well, but you want to keep them in the guild for whatever reason. If you have a clique of people who are like really making fun of this person, and also that's really a lot of times what it comes down to, is that you have like a group of 4 or 5 people where they start openly insulting a certain person in the guild for whatever reason. Usually insulting somebody just based on like just saying, you know, you're a piece of shit, you're terrible, or something like that, like non-constructive criticism is destructive. It's very bad for an organization in general. As I said, like with many of these things are not necessarily specific to Warcraft, but you know, it's important because Warcraft is an organization just like anything else. And whenever they're talking shit to that person, you know, that's going to make other people who think, hey, these guys should just shut the fuck up, and then other people saying, oh, why is this person here? And I mean, you guys know, I mean, there are a lot of reasons why you know, you can't get rid of somebody, and you know, it's hard to recruit people, a million different things. And so whenever you put all this stuff together, you know, you really don't really want to have people like kind of creating this toxic environment and everything like that. And people, you know, the more of them there are, the more cavalier people are with kind of the way that they behave. And so people stop bringing flasks to raid. And obviously, you know, each time is different, as I said before, but these are just like kind of overarching things where people feel like they don't have to listen to the leadership, and then you lose control, and then, you know, people do whatever they want, then the guild falls apart because they're less successful. It's just like kind of a, you know, a house of cards, and you don't really want to have, you know, even one card fall down, because I think, as you know, with the analogy, that would make the rest of them fall down. So anyway, guys, I kind of wanted to talk to you all about this because it's been kind of an issue. We used to have this problem a lot more in my guild. Luckily, you know, like we've kind of gotten rid of that mostly, pretty much actually entirely. But you know, it is a big issue. Like I get a lot of you guys messaging me, like, what should I do in this situation with my guild and everything. And so hopefully this answers a lot of your questions. And if you're not within this leadership role, you probably should just look for another guild. But if you are, the best way to do is take people out one at a time, or, you know, like nip it in the bud, kick them all out before it gets too much of an issue. And, you know, you're probably going to be better off to, you know, whatever. And you can also talk to the individuals that you know that are kind of like on the fence. You don't know if they're going to leave or not. Talk to them and kind of like confide in them. That's going to make them feel like they're special, make them feel like they're important, and make them probably stay with the guild whenever the time comes. And it will strengthen their bond with the team. And again, making a strong team, a strong organization is the most important thing. You know, like the strength of a chain is tested by its weakest link. And so you want to make sure that you have all of your you know, all of your weak links as tight as possible. And you can never really prevent everything, but you can at least try. And so hopefully, guys, this helped you. If you have any other questions, or you want me to talk about another subject that has to do with, I guess, like guild leadership or guild management, I've like managed and like led guilds and been a guild master and, you know, raid leader and everything for a very long time. And so I'm always interested in discussing these things. And so if you do have another topic that you want me to talk about, go ahead and let me know, and I might give you guys my insight, or not. Not really a whole lot else really going on in the game right now, and so wouldn't really bother me too much to talk about that stuff for a while. So that's pretty much all I got. I hope this helped you guys. It's a really difficult situation that you can find yourself in, and you know, you have to really use kind of everything that you can to make sure that, for one, you don't get there in the first place, and two, if you already are there, to get out of there as soon as possible for the betterment of not just yourself, but, you know, the greater good of your you know, your team, that they have, again, collectively, you know, I guess like passively or actively agreed to give you this Keeper of the Flame title, and you got to keep the flame burning. And that's really kind of what I hope that I showed you guys in this video, and gave some people some ideas. So that's pretty much all I got. Thanks for watching, and like, comment, subscribe.